you could have the best projects in the world and have a really bad resume and you're not going to get any calls back.
Hey guys, welcome to Coding After 30. In this video, I'm talking to Hamza from CompSciCodeFi. Amazing channel, a lot of great videos. Go check him out. But first, watch this interview. If you're looking to get into web development in 2021 or years to come, this is an important video for you. Not only are we going to talk about how to get started, but we're also going to talk about projects that you should have in your portfolio and how should you prepare your resume. A lot of great tips in here. I hope you guys enjoyed this interview. So let's get to it. Hey guys, welcome to Coding Over 30. I have Hamza here, amazing guy. Instead of me telling you about him, I'll have him introduce himself to you guys. So go ahead.
Yep, thanks for having me, man. I know we've been talking about this for like a couple weeks now. So I have a channel, it's called CompSciCodeFi, and I just kind of help people land their first jobs in software development. I've been working in the industry for about 3 years now, and I've been coding for 5 years.
Nice, nice. How did you get started? What was like the precursor to you going into web development?
Yeah, so I had been hopping around from job to job for a couple of years, and I was a bartender for most of that time. And there was really just one night where I had heard you could land a job in software development without a college degree, and I did a little bit of research into it, and I bought my first online course for about $10. And really, it just kind of took off from there. I just kept on taking that course and going to work, and it really just started off as like a hobby. Like the more I pursued it, the more like dedicated I became, and yeah, I just went full force into the whole thing, and finally was able to land my first job.
Yeah, that's awesome. That's awesome. And what was the first course you ever took? And what did you use? Did you get it like on Udemy or something?
Yeah, I did. So it was on Udemy. It was called Colt Steele's Web Developer Bootcamp.
Yeah.
And it, like, looking back on it, I think it's a little bit dated, but I think he just redid it. But
Yep,
yeah,
yep.
it was a $10 investment into my future. I don't know, it's just crazy because, like, it really just started off as something fun to do, like, there's a lot of times where I pick up these little hobbies, like, playing guitar or whatever, and then a couple months go by and I drop it. Well, I bought that $10 coding course and, like, I just stuck to it. I'd say within, like, 4 months, I was in a whole new career from being a bartender to working as a junior software developer outside of Tampa, Florida.
Yeah, that's awesome. And it's amazing like how cheap some of these amazing courses are on YouTube. I mean, Udemy, and they do get updated. There's no excuse to learn this stuff. Even if you go the free route, there's plenty of resources. Although I do like buying courses because I have a lot of them. But
Yeah, I saw.
you know. But it's so, what was your study process? Because for me, it did take me a little bit longer to get to where I am. And it's still a struggle, but I think it all depends on like the commitment someone's able to make and the responsibilities you have. It's different if someone has a family and kids, the amount of time they're going to be able to dedicate to it versus like, someone who's single. So what was your basic timeline in terms of like, and what did you do to study?
So my story was like a little bit different when I tell it to people, and I don't really recommend it. I don't have any kids, but I had come across a little bit of money. It was like maybe $4,000, and I had had like a really bad day at work. And on the drive home, I had already been coding for like 2 weeks. I was pretty much over my job. Like I was like, I'm gonna get a job in web development. I don't care what it takes. I'm gonna make it happen. So I quit my job. Yeah, I just lived at home for about 4 months and just lived off of that money that I had. And it was pretty much just night and day, nothing but coding. I know that doesn't really work for everybody, but that's what I did. The moment I woke up, I was pretty much coding and studying until the moment I went to bed. I would take a couple breaks on the weekends, but it was pretty much just like that for about 2 months straight. Once I hit the 2-month mark, I started taking all the knowledge that I learned from those courses and building some projects, tweaking up my resume. And I just started applying while I was learning. I mean, it was really just that. I applied everywhere. I made a LinkedIn. I was like networking with people. I was going to meetup groups in my area. Like I was going to get a job in software development. Like nobody was going to tell me no. It had to happen. Plus, I was running out of money, so I really didn't have a choice. Like I had to get a job.
Yeah, and I think that's like the thing that a lot of people don't realize, the sacrifice that it takes. And sometimes when, like in your case, you're like, man, I'm going to run out of money. I better make something happen. You kind of had to hustle. You had to push through. Yep. And something like for me, it took me a lot longer is because I did have a comfortable job. And so there was no incentive for me to switch. And so I think in my case, it was like, well, I could always do this for a while. And it's only until I quit my job where I was like, oh, fuck, I'm gonna run out of money too if I don't make something happen. And, and that's kind of like what I did. I'm not saying people should quit a job, but they should at least have this idea
Mhm.
like, there's no going back. I got to go forward.
Exactly, yeah, it's that mindset of, like, "I don't have a choice, I'm gonna make this happen," because it's so easy to wake up one morning and be like, "You know what? Like, I don't feel like doing it today. Like, I'll study another time." And then, like, those feelings kinda pile up, and then the next thing you know, you just quit and, like, you decided you're just not gonna do it.
So, in terms of like, how did you break down your study, like HTML, CSS, JavaScript, and did you learn like a framework or something like that?
So I started, of course, with HTML and CSS. I really didn't know like what language to choose. Like I just followed along with the online course. Yeah, so I did HTML and CSS. I got relatively decent at it. I didn't stay too long on it. I was like kind of excited to start JavaScript. So I moved on to that. And I would say for honestly a good amount of time, it was nothing but HTML and CSS for maybe like the first month and a half, 2 months. I ended up picking up another course after I finished the Cold Steel's web development bootcamp. It was a back-end course on Node. Looking back, I didn't really need that because my first job was a front-end job, but I guess it did kind of help me in the interview because it made me sound like I had like more knowledge across the board. I recommend anyone who's a junior just like touch on the back end just a little bit. Like you don't have to be great at it, but just so you kind of understand why things work the way they do. So yeah, HTML, CSS, JavaScript, and I started Vue, and by then I had landed that first job.
Nice, nice. And I know you and I talked a little bit about this idea that there's a blurred line between a front end developer and a back end developer. For someone who's just starting out, would you recommend still focus on front end first and then just learn Node.js when you get your first job, or some sort of back end technology? Or would you kind of recommend a different split in terms of like, 60% front end, but understand the back end and, stuff like that?
I would say go for what you're most interested in, but definitely touch on both. Like if you're dead set on being a front end developer, get good at being a front end developer, but definitely hit the back end just a little bit. Like understanding how APIs work and like how things save into a database. Like it doesn't take that long to learn that stuff. Same thing with the back end. Like if you're dead set on being a back end developer or landing a junior developer back end position, touch on the front end, like understand how like components work and things like that.
Yeah, no, like I think like for me, once you learn front end, I instead of like in my case creating backends from scratch, I use like services that already exist. But I think this idea of like mastering or at least being good enough at consuming APIs makes a lot of difference.
Yeah, so the thing is, like, it really boils down to when you're trying to get that first junior developer job, you just want to impress the person that you're the interviewer. You just want to impress them like as much as you can. They want to see that it'll take a very little amount of effort to train you. Like
Yep.
they're gonna understand that you're not gonna really know anything. But if they see, oh, like he did some stuff in MongoDB, he knows React and he knows Vue, he's built all these different projects. Like the more you explore, the better you're going to look to a potential employer.
And speaking about projects, what is a good project to have for your portfolio? And you probably want to have like two or three, but like obviously you don't want to have a tic-tac-toe game or some
No,
like weather
absolutely
widget.
not.
But
Yeah, see, that's what got me in the beginning. I wasted a lot of job applications when I first started applying, and man, I wish I could find some of those projects that I made, the first ones, because my resume was about 10 projects of just like stupid little small things like tic-tac-toe boards. I made like a little etch-a-sketch in like CSS and like a Game Boy and like really dumb things. But if you can just hit like 3 completed projects and deploy them on the internet, I think that's fine for a junior developer.
and like what do you like mean more like completed? Would you say for one maybe have a full HTML, CSS and React, like let's say website, maybe doesn't do anything particular, but you just have it just looks good. And then maybe another project could be something where you utilize getting data from an API and you create a project that kind of makes sense of it. And then maybe like your third projects could be a little bit more complex where you have like authentication and like different users and you're able to display different kind of like information based on the user that's logged in or like whatever.
Yeah, no, exactly. Yeah, that's perfect. Just try to make them uh, more real world examples. When I say completed, I mean like if you're going to do that HTML and CSS and maybe a little JavaScript website, don't leave lorem ipsum text on there. Like actually like complete it. Don't just be like, oh, this is like a demonstration of my skills. Like, build the full project. It's only
Yeah.
3 that you put on your resume. I mean, you can absolutely knock that out. It doesn't have to be the next Facebook or the next Reddit, but a completed project.
Yeah, so don't put lorem ipsum. I'm just gonna say that I am guilty of still
Oh,
using
me too. Yeah.
the placeholder text. So like in terms of, let's say, someone starting out and they're looking to build their first like portfolio piece, and it could be like HTML and CSS. So we could kind of like talk over this. Let me switch to share screen here. So here's a website I did, and for our first like HTML and CSS project, like something like this, and obviously I could make it like be like it's a real company and replace the lorem ipsum text and stuff like
Yeah.
that. And we have like the about. I'm using like super large photos, so I gotta fix that. I feel the layout is pretty good.
No, this
I
looks
built
great. Yeah,
I built
absolutely.
it last year. This is like work. Again, I use like whatever images I could find, but I know I have to optimize them. That's why they load slow.
Right.
But I'm gonna redo that so they load faster. Yep, and so it has a contact page.
Does that work right now?
Right now you're not able the information doesn't go anywhere, but I could hook it up to a thing that will
Yeah.
process the form. So that'll probably be like definitely if you have a form, should have a working form.
Yeah, I mean, this works. If you wanted to break it up, like you were saying, where you have, one type to demonstrate, your HTML and CSS skills, then another project to, demonstrate something else. Yeah, that's fine too. I mean, this looks great. This really shows that you know styles and that you can make a responsive design.
Okay, so that's cool. So there's another one. This one is still like work in progress, and it's currently more of like, okay, we found an API endpoint and figure out how to be able to take that data. So this shows like different countries and their population cases and deaths and recovered from corona. Then I'm
Yeah.
using like a little map here. I still have to implement the on click pop-up. So right now it just has a random message, and then you could click on individual country, like countries. It'll take you to that country, show you that information. I still have to implement the pop-up, but something like this, maybe add a little bit more complexity to it. But in terms of like a React app that kind of shows like I understand how like APIs work.
Yeah, no, it looks great. So you're hitting an endpoint right now on that, and you're dumping it into a table.
Yeah, so this is the endpoint for a table, and then when you hit individual things, it'll just get that data for the individual thing. And the way the API works, you get more information for individual countries. So when I go to all, it hits a slightly different endpoint. If you click like the individual countries, it will hit an endpoint with that country in a query string to get more specific information for the
Nice.
country. And so it's almost done. I'm not gonna make it too complex.
You're using Redux.
This is no, I'm not using Redux. It's like simple enough. I ended up
Yeah.
creating a custom hook to fetch data. So like whatever screen needs that data gets that particular data,
Yeah.
and then for the stuff that like for instance, if I click here or I click here, it will trigger the same like set state to make it switch to where it needs to go, and it lives in the upper parent. So like I don't really have to use Redux because I'm not like prop drilling too far. But if I wanted
Right,
to,
right.
I could use context of Redux. But it was like simple enough.
No, it
So
looks great.
so something like this, you would say it's like okay to put in your portfolio. It's not too simple.
No, I think that's perfect. I think it looks great. I think that you should just be able to walk them through how you made it. They're going to ask you questions like I just did about like Redux and how props work and how components work. And were you hitting multiple different endpoints when you use this, or like you just said, were you building a query string and then fetching that data?
So like it's different endpoints, but the query string like changes based on what button you click. So like what I try to avoid in this project is to have a bunch of different functions that call a different endpoint. So I created like a use like here I'll actually be able to show it to you. What I ended up doing here, I only have this use fetch data hook that I created. Basically, all it does, it just takes a query, and that could be to a different endpoint completely. And it just, I mean, we don't have to like understand like everything here, but it basically just returns the state, which is basically if there's an error, like what state it's in, like idle fetching or fetched, and then the data. So that so you could reuse this hook to get whatever you want. So I didn't want to have like a bunch of different functions. I just wanted to create like one single kind of hook that's flexible enough to get whatever data I needed.
That you need. Yeah. Yep. No, that's a good answer.
Yeah. And so this other project I'll show you right now, it's not finished. And the reason why it's not finished is because one mistake I made is I worked on too many things at once. And I kind of made this more for myself at first, and then I was like, maybe I should make like some sort of like platform that allows people to add their own courses and do their own studying. And then like scope creep happened to a point where I basically just got overwhelmed because of all the different functionalities they have. But for now, like when you just like not signed in, when you log in, you have videos, you click links, and it kind of has like cool links that you could just like click and go to.
Right.
And this is what I do for like my note taking. I see something cool. I'm like, oh, 3 ways to convert node list. And I just save it into a link in my app. And what's cool about this, instead, like I didn't create this backend from scratch, but I do have it. It's not Firebase. It's using Strapi. Yeah, what's cool about this, you log in and I have all the data here. And I could add it in this backend, but you could also programmatically add it, from the front end. And so like I have this like cool CMS that I didn't write from scratch. But what's awesome about Strapi, it is based on Node. So if you know Node and you want to add additional functionality, it's very easy to do, like because you have the source code and you can do whatever you want. And so it like basically I'm pulling that data from that API. And what's cool here, it's you could programmatically write code here. So like once someone signs in, like I have some basic authentication here. And like I said, this project is not finished, but you see it opens up other options for like lessons. If people have lessons to watch, you have your dashboard, and the dashboard will have like videos you saved, the lessons you saved.
That's pretty convenient.
It'll have like your blog, your profile. And I added this bug section. Right now, none of these work. Like I said, I bit off too much that I could chew. From the standpoint of to complete this project, it will take a lot of time. And so like,
yeah, you definitely, the scope is increasing like as you go, but
yeah, which is not good. So like,
you want to cut it off, especially if it's just something you want to put on your resume. From the beginning, you should kind of think, is this something that I want to push all the way to production and have people actually use, or is this more just to demonstrate my skills? I'm pretty guilty of scope creep too, personally and at work all the time.
Yeah, so let's say if I took that, like, let's say if I were fishing, I'm working on a time tracker app that'll probably finish before this one, but let's say because we have this one on screen. So if I just basically, instead of adding like that complex sign-in section, let's say if I just have these 3 sections, I have links, I have a blog section that's broken right now. And then on the sign-in section, when people sign in, they basically have a way to add a blog and a link programmatically from this screen, so they don't have to use CMS. Would that be like enough, you think, or would you put a little bit more stuff for this particular project?
I'll probably ask you a couple more questions. Those videos, do those auto-populate, or do you put them in yourself?
So these videos are from your auto-populated from your list that I have in my backend.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so they're not like, I'm not going to like, because these are the videos I saved. What I wanted to do is basically have a way for me that the videos that I like, I could save on my site and watch from my sites. Because issue I have is if I'm on YouTube, it's very easily to get distracted. So like I want to consume the content that I want to consume,
Gotcha.
Basically without any distractions. And that was like the idea for here.
Okay. Yeah, I think if the blog is working and you're applying for a front end position, like that's your goal, then yeah, I would call this something sufficient that you could put on your resume. Absolutely.
Yeah, no, that's cool. That's cool. And yeah, so and then like you would recommend like 2 to 3 projects, or would you say like 3 is probably a good number to shoot for?
3 minimum for junior level position. I would say 3 minimum, 5 maximum.
Okay, 3 to 5. That's good.
Yeah, that way if you're getting past 5 and you still haven't gotten a job, you should probably go back on those 5 and make them better.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say.
Putting a bunch of crappy projects on your resume.
So. Yeah, I think I like that idea the best. Like if you have 3 to 5 projects, you could always go back, refactor, add another feature, add to them, and really polish the project. So it's better to have like 3 to 5 polished projects on your resume. And what I think I'm going to do is for my resume, the 3 projects that I showed you, that's what I'm going to add to my portfolio. And I'll just, polish these obviously to be functional in a way that they're not breaking when people playing with them. And then I have another like time tracker app that I'm still working on it. And that's kind of cool too, because I'm using like GraphQL, which is like exciting. And I think,
you want to throw newer technologies in there when you can. Definitely.
Yeah. So my idea is like, okay, I have React, JavaScript, HTML, CSS. I'm familiar with Redux. And then, in terms of databases, I'm pushing like MongoDB, SQL. And then in terms of working with APIs, I want to be comfortable working with REST API. And that's what the COVID-19 tracker does. And then other application, Time Tracker, it uses Strapi. And what's cool about Strapi, it allows you to use either REST or Graph. So the time tracker that I'm building uses GraphQL. And I think like, between those 4 projects, I think that should be kind of like enough at this point, like at where I am, I think.
Yeah, absolutely. I would just like I've said, it's when you're applying, it's just you just keep on tweaking as you go. You just keep applying to those jobs and just keep improving your current projects and improving the resume. And you'll get where you want to be eventually.
Here, I'm gonna scroll up. I'm gonna show you my resume. We don't have to make changes right now, but just talk about like just quickly things that maybe stand out, that maybe not the best practice, and give like overall ideas. But we could come back to the details like a little bit later.
Yeah, absolutely.
Why don't you tell us a little bit about your channel? You have so much like great content, and the one video. The one video I really loved was the one, the 2 questions you should ask if you're competent enough in like a programming language.
Yeah. That was a question I used to ask myself all the time when I got started, because I was like, what? I had nothing to compare to. Like, how do I go apply for a job? Like, am I good enough? I don't know. But yeah, my channel is CompSciCodeFi. It is to help people. I'm not really focusing on teaching people how to code. It's more just helping people with the next step, which is landing their first job. So things like tweaking their resume and just giving tech advice on like networking and things like that.
Yeah, and I think that's important because you definitely need to know how to code, but also like getting your job is a whole different skill in itself. Like the interviewing process,
absolutely.
making sure your resume is up on par. So I'm kind of like in the first stage of that. Let's work together, build a bunch of projects for our portfolio, and I'm going to kind of like be your motivator to help you get shit done. But the next step, and that's awesome, like that's why I really like, connecting with you, is because then I could pass people to you for the next step and have you work with them and kind of help them get to where they need to go. And so, yeah, that's really cool. So, yeah, definitely check out your channel. Really awesome stuff. So let's do like a quick like resume look. So here's my resume. And so I'll quickly like go over it. I have my objective, and it was like to obtain a position as a front-end developer, professional setting that will enable me to learn new skills and give ability to utilize the ones that I have required through my education and work experience. And then here I write like tech use, HTML, CSS, JavaScript, React, JS, Redux, GraphQL, Git, NPM, VS Code. I should probably add like REST API and maybe something else. But we could come back to this. I'll just quickly go through it. And my professional experience, I just started from the most current. I work at VersaSuite, been working there for a year, responsible for developing front-end UI and logic in medical patient portal web application based on VersaSuite's Windows Desktop Edition. It's built with React and Redux. Additional responsibilities include being familiar with ASP.NET API, C# language to troubleshoot the API when required. When I worked at Greenwich Marketing, I did front-end development with WordPress, and I worked alongside with senior developers and clients to create customized UI in WordPress, blah, 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 blah. And then I talked about the customers we have. Then I did an internship, which was mostly front-end, working with HTML, CSS, and learning JavaScript with React. This was like unpaid. And then I also had, before I got hired at the Greenwich Marketing Company, I did an internship with them, and then I just put like, I'm fluent in Russian, my soft skills, and then other stuff that I have. Based on kind of like overview of this, what would you say that jumps out that probably needs to be fixed?
So yeah, a couple things. It took me a little while to figure this out too, but this whole resume thing it's really just a big game. It's about putting as many buzzwords in your resume as you can and just getting straight to the point right away. A person who's going to look at your resume is going to look at it for only a couple seconds, and then they're going to decide right then and there if they're going to call you for an interview. Each one of these jobs or the experiences that you have, you shouldn't have like a summary of what you did. Instead, you should have bullet points of the technologies you used there and what you did with them. So,
Right.
like an example would be for my current job, I have my resume up right now. Bullet point. It says wrote a Python script Lambda function that converted 911 call JSON to XML. The next bullet
Okay.
point. Wrote numerous integration unit tests for the front end in Cypress. Next bullet point. Created an MVP mobile iOS application in Swift. Next bullet point. So because the person who's looking at your resume, honestly, most of them are not going to read that at all. They're going to glance at it, see a bunch of words that make it sound like you know what you're talking about, and then they're going to call you. And also, you can add some of the other things that you've used. Like you just showed me Strappy. I don't think I see that on there. Or
Yeah, that's
deploy
not on there.
Heroku. Really hit those other technologies you've used because that's going to bump your keywords up.
Yeah.
They use ATS scanning software for these resumes that just kind of look for those keywords in the resume. So, you could have the best projects in the world and have a really bad resume and you're not going to get any calls back. I think a lot of people focus a lot on the projects while those are extremely important, but you got to remember that the resume is more important. The projects are just to make your resume look good because ultimately the resume is what's going to get you that interview.
No, that's good. That's good. I think like kind of that would be like a good first step for me to write it in a bullet style format with the stuff that I did in terms of like showing a problem and the solution, I guess.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and, like, especially for juniors, the thing that I found when I was looking for my first job is it's really hard to get stuff on your resume, like, it's super blank, like, what are you gonna put on it? You don't have any experience. So, a good way to do that is just kind of, like, really stretching, the things you've worked on. Go to things like meetups in your area if you can, and you can even put that on your resume,
Yep.
attended a 8-hour course on Kubernetes well, for front end, attended an 8-hour course on, React, at a local meetup group. It doesn't matter, like, they just wanna see that you're super interested in this and you're not just trying to pull a fast one on them. They know you're not gonna know anything as a junior. They just
Yeah.
want somebody who's passionate.
Yeah. So, like looking at this resume, let's say I did not have work experience. Would you then do like kind of similar idea and let's say
Project
list the 3 projects that I
projects.
earlier in this
Yep.
video and do that same bullet point type of idea?
Yeah, so the goal is to, like, really beef it up as much as you can with the buzzwords. So, yeah, projects, use your projects, hit those bullet points with the technologies that you've used, and also, if you can, for your first experience, put freelance work in there, and
Okay.
try to just you don't even gotta get paid for it. Just do one from, like, a family member or a friend or
Yeah.
whatever. It's just more room on your resume. So they'll be like, "Oh, he's done freelance work," whatever. Your brother gave you $100 to make him a website. Sure.
Yeah, so and then like for this resume, for instance, I don't have any of my projects. So what I would do is keep this bullet points and then add a section projects, discuss the 3 projects that I did and the tech used as well. Or do you think it's in my case this would be enough just having my work experience?
I like what you have at the top with the tech used, like the thing I would say like technologies known or
Yep.
whatever, and organize them separately. Like I wouldn't put VS Code in there with JavaScript. I would separate like my text editors and IEDs in like a different column. But that's good right there. And then for the experience, it would be the bullet points of what you did on that project, created multiple CRUD endpoints, whatever,
Yep.
did front end tests, stuff like that.
Yeah, so I'll work on those changes so then we could have another
Yeah, I'll
conversation
send you, one of
about them.
my old resumes too, or actually I'll send you my newer resume, and you'll when you look at it, you'll just see how completely different it is.
Yeah, no, that'll be awesome. That'll be great. Any parting wisdom before we end this?
If you're looking to get a job in this field, you can absolutely do it. Like, I I promise you, you can do it. No matter what you hear from other people or any excuses you come up with in your mind, if this is something you're passionate and interested in doing, just make it happen and don't quit doing it.
Yeah, man, thanks for your time. It was great having you here, and
Yeah,
we
thank
could
you.
definitely talk more. Hey guys, thanks for watching. I'm glad you guys were able to make it through the whole interview. For me, it was very helpful, and I'm glad that Hamza came on and gave us all those tips. This is something that I'm going to be applying to help me move to my next position. Anyway, if you like what we do on this channel, consider subscribing. Let us know in the comments what you guys thought, and until next time, I'll see you guys later. Look, I'm not moving. I am frozen.